The COVID lockdown of 2020 didn't prevent the Seroptimists International from pursuing their mission of combating human trafficking. The following video is a compilation of online streaming events that were designed to educate and highlight this modern-day evil.
I pledge allegiance to Seroptimists and to the ideals for which it stands.
The sincerity of service, the integrity of profession, and the love of country.
I will put forth my greatest effort to promote, uphold, and defend these ideals.
For a larger fellowship in home, in society, in business, for country, and for God.
So about 9 years ago, our club started a focus on human trafficking awareness, bringing in speakers and having panel discussions on the issue. Just because we are a global organization, they were seeing this around the world, and we decided that we should look into it, and now it's becoming much more in the news, and actually our lawmakers are even changing laws here in Michigan to help out.
As they should. We've done a few stories, and it is unbelievable how easy it is for a young girl to be misled.
So what we're finding is that there is a person that controls and dominates another person to make them commit and engage in commercial sex acts. And they are using force, fraud, or coercion, or a mixture of all of these things to get them to do this. They're controlling them. They're controlling where they go, when they eat, what they eat. They're getting all the money for all of the commercial sex acts that the victim / survivor is doing here. So that's the basic difference, is that if somebody's doing it on their own to support their own drug habit and nobody's making them do it, it's an act of prostitution, which, is a misdemeanor if you're caught with it. But if somebody is using force, fraud, or coercion for an 18-year-old or older, it becomes human trafficking.
Sex and labor are two of the most common areas that people understand human trafficking to occur. And so, when you think about something like sex trafficking, typically people are talking about something like prostitution. It's where you're profiting off of somebody's sex work, where somebody's being forced to commit sex for money acts, if you will. But then you could also think of it in terms of, things like pornography, or even something like exotic dancing at a strip club or some other type of place. These are type of sex work arrangements, if you will, where somebody could be forced, defrauded, or coerced into a trafficking situation. So that you could understand to be sex trafficking. But then you have another category, which is labor trafficking, and this is where you're profiting very oftentimes from what could be understood as somebody's more manual labor, if you will. So a lot of times this takes the form of a domestic servitude situation where somebody is working inside of a home, for example, and they're not profiting from that service that they're providing. You've also got situations where people are working out of agricultural situations. Perhaps they're a farmhand, or they're working at a massage parlor or some sort of restaurant. And again, the situation would be the same in that they're either not profiting very much or they're not profiting at all from the services that they're rendering.
Wayne County has the state's largest airport. Wayne County is connected to an international border. I-94 going east to west runs straight through Wayne County. I-75 north to south. Because of all of these factors, I believe we are more inclined to have an issue with human trafficking, because human trafficking is about moving people.
Michigan is a top 10 state for trafficking in terms of prevalence, and some of the bigger states that you would probably expect to find on that list fall ahead of us. So you've got states like California, Texas, Florida, New York, some of the more populous states of the union. But then, you've got a few others that may or may not surprise people. States like Ohio and Georgia also fall ahead of Michigan, and then we fall 7th.
We've had kids from as far north as Houghton and Escanaba, so up UP, We've had kids from Muskegon and Cadillac and White Lake and the Grand Rapids area. We've had kids from Jackson and Kalamazoo, all along that whole I-94 corridor from the west of Michigan all the way into what we would call Southeast Michigan and metropolitan Detroit area. There is no community that is immune to sex trafficking because of the prevalence on the internet and the ability. It's significant. And we've even had young people from other states be in our treatment program here at Vista.
Just talking about the state of Michigan, it's about a 2-to-1 ratio adult to child. So the majority of the victims that we see are adult victims of trafficking. But unfortunately and tragically, you do see people under the age of 18. We would call that person a minor or a juvenile being trafficked. In fact, I just, by coincidence, happened to run into one of my colleagues over at my law enforcement office just today. And she was telling me that she was working with a young girl right now, as we speak, that was trafficked by her own family members at the age of 13, and she's now 15, and she's still struggling with exploitation issues today. And so the reality of juvenile sex trafficking, particularly by members of one's own family, is a reality that occurs within our state. It's not that labor trafficking doesn't exist or does not occur. It certainly does. I think that especially when you would get to some of the more rural areas of the state, possibly up north where you have more of a robust agricultural industry, you're going to see more labor trafficking occur in those areas. That's not to say it doesn't happen in the lower peninsulas around the urban centers, but especially in the inner cities and around the urban centers, and even in the suburbs as well, you're primarily going to see sexual trafficking.
The vast majority of our clients have been labor trafficked, which surprises a lot of people because sex trafficking definitely seems to get the lion's share of the attention in the media. A lot of the education that's out there tends to focus on sex trafficking, but labor trafficking is almost exclusively a phenomenon with foreign nationals. It's very difficult to labor traffic an American citizen. So all of my clients that I personally worked with, they've all been labor trafficking. So most of them have been through domestic service, either being maids or medical caretakers in the home or nannies. We've had people that were working in restaurants. We've had people that have come to the United States expecting a job, and then they get here and then the job's not there. But they still have a debt that they have to pay back. So then they find themselves working in different areas trying to pay back these traffickers. We've had Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, also Philippines. We've had referrals from India, from Turkey. Wow. So yeah, pretty much all over the world.
What you have nationally is a situation where, again, according to the most recent 2019 statistics of the hotline, you have foreign nationals being trafficked slightly more than domestic citizens here local to the US. In Michigan, that's flipped. You have more domestic Michigan residents being trafficked internal to the state here than you do foreign nationals being trafficked within Michigan borders. The red flags are important to recognize. So, I think that one of the most important ones, and one that I try to talk about very often, is the configuration of the people that you're seeing right in front of your face. So human trafficking has often been understood as a crime that is hidden in plain sight. That means that you can be looking at something and not know that you're looking at it, literally. And so it's important to know and understand what it is that you're looking for. So for example, if you have an older adult, perhaps it's a male adult, and they have a small cadre of underage looking people around them, maybe 2 or 3 young people. Maybe those young people are very deferential to the older person. Perhaps they don't appear to be related. Maybe they don't have access to cellular devices or any other means of communication. Perhaps they're carrying large amounts of cash. They don't have possession of their personal documentation. Perhaps they appear somewhat disheveled in their appearance, or looking like they haven't changed clothing in several days, for example. These are all red flags that can tell you something about a scenario where people don't fit together. The configuration seems wrong, And consequently, it may be something to take a closer look at and possibly even report to law enforcement.
Kids today all have phones and all have social media. And guess what? So do the bad guys.
Have the conversations that the internet is not safe. And that they should not share personal information. They shouldn't download apps. They shouldn't do pictures that they wouldn't be proud to show their mother or their grandmother.
One of the key things that we want to do to teach the public about human trafficking is help them understand the extent to which trafficking originates online today. So much of grooming and recruitment, and then the eventual trafficking of an individual, can all be executed digitally today.
You know, do they have a cell phone? The answer is probably yes. Do they have their cell phone at night when nobody's around? Probably. Do they have social media? Probably. Well, then they're the potential to be a target, okay? Especially if they're posting or complaining about things that happen at home. I can't stand my parent. My parents make me so mad, even if they don't mean it, and they're just venting about their parents and things like that. Traffickers are looking for that kind of thing because they're looking to come right into the life and to meet this need and fill this void. And so part of our training is we talk about this stuff with the officers, and we explain different types of pimps and different types of traffickers. And one of them, I'm sure you're familiar with, we call it the Romeo pimp, right? And so it starts as just like that. You know, I'll buy you stuff. I'll take care of you. Your parents are jerks. I'll take care of you. I'll take care of you. And then all of a sudden, you know, what do you think? This stuff is free. You got to do this, right? And it can get violent or not. You know, it can change very suddenly and very quickly. Yet good young people who are maybe having an issue with family or with their life, or maybe they're getting, you know, starting to dabble in, I don't know, in drugs and alcohol and things like that, and getting in party environments. And you know, it's so easy to be lured into this kind of stuff. When you're selling a human being, you can reuse that person over and over and over. And they're a human commodity. They're a piece of money-making property in the eyes of these horrible individuals.
If you see something, say something. I think that we all have a tendency. It's, you know, it's not one set of people or another. It's all of us. There's a tendency to say, if it doesn't concern me, I'm not interested and I don't want to get involved. But again, going back to the point that was made earlier in our talk, you know, it's a hidden in plain sight thing. You can be looking at it, and now that you have a better understanding of what's presented in front of you, I would encourage you to have your radar up and to take that step, sometimes that easy step of getting on your iPhone or, you know, your cell phone and calling the local police station and just reporting what you saw. If you can do something safely, I'm not advocating for you to take unnecessary risks, but what if you could, for example, take a picture of a license plate that was transporting somebody or a group of people that looked suspicious? You could snap a photo of that. Remember, your cell phone is a camera and it's a recording device. So in many ways, you could help law enforcement by collecting some kind of evidence, if you will, and then transferring that evidence to law enforcement. So, you know, if you see something, say something. That's a great way to make a difference. You know, human trafficking is a federal crime. It's also a violation of Michigan law. So you could go either route. Certainly, I know for a fact the FBI, the Detroit division, would take your complaint, or whatever division you happen to fall under. So, you know, any state, you can call the FBI, and those numbers are easily accessible on Google. If you're in Detroit, for example, you could call Detroit Police Department. We call it DPD. MSP, Michigan State Police, is another one. If you're in Grand Rapids, it's GRPD. So, you know, the locals, they will take those calls, and of course the feds as well. I would add the Department of Homeland Security in there as well.
We get paid to go and check it out. You're not putting us out or taking us away from other things or more important things or anything like that. That's what our job is. And you know, when we get to talk to a girl and see her when she's rescued, and we get to see the bad guy get a nice hefty sentence, it's worth it all.
If you are in imminent danger, and this goes for anyone, not just a trafficking survivor or a victim, but especially to somebody who's being trafficked, you need to call 911. Imminent danger, 911 right away.
Um, Sometimes a young person will come to us from the Department of Health and Human Services. They find a young person who has experienced some kind of sexual abuse, and through the intake process, they identify that young person as having experienced sexual exploitation or trafficking. And then they do an assessment, and then they make the referral to the best place, and it could be Vista Maria or one of our other sister organizations in the state. That's one way. The next is through a police raid situation. Typically, the police will know of a missing young person. They might even know, they might be tracking on the internet that they know this young person and they know that they're underage, and they'll set up what we call a sting operation to go in with a decoy and rescue her, and then bring her into care and get her out of that exploitation. And that's why the Freedom Center was created, so that there's a safe, nurturing place to wrap around in what I call an integrated way with physical health, mental health, safety, trauma informed, so that that young person doesn't feel abandoned, does not feel shame, doesn't feel all of those negative things that kind of inhibit the ability to kind of find self and heal.
By the time they get to us, especially if they're referred by an attorney, we already know they're a survivor of trafficking. So our goal isn't to like get the nitty and gritty details and to re-traumatize them. So as much or as little as they want to share is fine. Our goal is to just help them where they're at now. So we talk to them, we just ask them a lot of questions and let them share with us how they're feeling. And then we kind of guide the conversation through different areas of their life. Like, do they have food security? Are they able to work? Can they pay rent? Do they have a safe place to live? Do they have any medical issues or mental health issues that need addressing? And then we do a definite safety screening with them too, trying to find out if they're still in contact with their traffickers, or if their traffickers have been trying to contact them. Do they have any recommendations from law enforcement or any restrictions placed on them from law enforcement? So we go through a whole safety screening with them as well. And then we ask them, what do you want to work on first? What's most important for you to kind of accomplish first? And then we'll just set up goals from there and go through the steps to get each goal accomplished, hopefully before they're done working with us.
The good news is about 70 to 75% of the young people that come through our program actually, stabilize and are able to move into less restrictive settings, meaning in family or community or treatment foster home, and are able to continue to move on.
I have found in the circuit court that oftentimes those individuals that we come in contact with are there because they have committed an offense, which is a felony, but that felony is part of their activity as a victim of human trafficking. In particular, I noticed several years ago that one of the additional job requirements was that the young lady, in addition to providing services for the customer, her employer, the trafficker, would require her to steal the car. So if they went to a motel, after she had performed the services, her customer may step into the restroom to freshen up. She would run out the door, grab the keys off of the dresser, jump in the car, and steal the car. And so that's how I have run into victims of human trafficking, that and in domestic violence cases. Oftentimes, we will find that there is a relationship that is connected through a child. The trafficker may have a child. It's not uncommon. The trafficker may have a child with the victim. The victim wants to escape. The victim wants to leave, but that child is what's holding them there. We find domestic violence in that relationship. And so after peeling back the layers and discovering that this is not just a traditional girlfriend-boyfriend relationship, we find that this individual, I have a choice. I can leave, I can run, but I can't take my child.
there are cases that young people will, they use the term fake it till they make it, and they'll convince a judge that they're they appear, they say the right things because they also want to please a judge, just like they want to please their trafficker, just like they want to please a John. It's very, they're people pleasers, and so I can tell the judge, or convince the therapist, right? And we do see probably about of that, then 10% may come back. Some kids will truant, when they get to the open part of the program and they're on home visits, they'll truant. We have about 5% that will do that, and they're really, they're not, when they're young people on the run, right? You can tell they don't have the means, to take care of themselves. So what will they fall back to, right? A trafficking situation for housing, for food, for clothing, because that's what they know, right? That's how I survive.
Oftentimes, the victim does not want to disclose what's going on. First offense is most likely they're going to get probation. I had one young lady who we did manage to assist, who did get away from her trafficker for about 2 years. And then we got word that she was involved again. And the question became, why? The trafficker had informed her he knew that her sister lived in Atlanta. And if she didn't come back, he was going to get her sister. So to protect her sister, she went back.
Almost every time they have a variety of legal needs that arise soon after they leave those circumstances. So whether that's a criminal record that needs to be addressed based on circumstances that they've encountered through force, fraud, or coercion, perhaps they have a family law issue that has to be resolved. Maybe they've been separated from their children as a result of their trafficking, and now they want to reestablish custody of that child. Or perhaps they're a foreign national and they have an immigration issue that needs to be resolved because technically they're not in the country legally, but they've been trafficked into the United States from a foreign country. So we see a lot of criminal issues, family issues, immigration issues that arise. But whatever the nature of the issue, the bottom line is that trafficking survivors have legal needs when they leave their exploitative circumstances. And the problem is that very oftentimes survivors do not have the knowledge or the financial means to address those legal needs. And so it's vitally important to us that they receive the free legal services so that they can get those needs addressed and they can move forward into their future unencumbered by things that are holding them back. If you don't give them that legal counsel, those legal issues tend to linger for years and years and years at times, and it holds them back from being able to do things like secure meaningful employment, or as we said, reestablish a union with their family members, or stay in the country legally and start to work and build a life for themselves. So legal counsel can help address all of those things, and it's so important.
Get involved. Find out how you can come to a place like Vista Maria and do an activity or an event just one time. Find out if it's in your heart and you have the time to become a mentor. And that's another great way to get involved. And then the third thing is you can help by giving financially. I have had people that have said to me, Miss Angela, I don't have time for any of that, but I do have a checkbook.
Volunteerism is a huge deal. So for example, in my program, translation services are very expensive. So if we could have volunteer translators waiting on standby that I could call and say, hey, are you available for a call on Tuesday at 3:00 in the afternoon? That could save us potentially maybe $100 on a particular case, for a 15 or 20-minute call. So, or an in-person interview, whatever it is. So that's just one example of a way people could volunteer. But depending on the organization, I'm sure they have a myriad of different ways that you could help, whether it's financially or rolling up your sleeves and digging in.
We talk about human trafficking, but it's not a polite activity. And when it's all over said and done, it's slavery. And so I will fight against slavery, and I will help others to build a structure to eradicate slavery. And that's what it is in the end.
My name is Carrie Blankenship, President-elect of Seroptimus International of Grosse Pointe and the co-chairwoman of the Human Trafficking Committee. On behalf of Seroptimus International's Grosse Pointe and Greater Macomb clubs, we are proud to present the compilation of interviews describing the horrific facts and issues about human trafficking in our country and around the world. Seroptimus International is a global volunteer movement founded in 1921 with a network of 72,000 club members in 121 countries. Advocating for human rights and gender equality, the forefront of Seroptimus International's advocacy is its work across 8 UN centers, where our UN representatives ensure that the voices of women and girls are heard. Each community volunteer organization provides women and girls with education and training opportunities to achieve economic empowerment. Collectively, we help empower women and girls every day by showcasing awareness and by offering alternatives to overcome the many struggles and obstacles women face. As presented, human trafficking is a business of stealing freedom for profit. Human trafficking is a multi-billion-dollar criminal industry that denies the freedom to 24.9 million people worldwide. It is slavery. With your help, we can stop the exploitation of our young women and men. We have grassroots projects to help women and girls achieve their individual and collective potential, realize aspirations, and help provide an equal voice for women in communities worldwide. Please join us by contacting